The night they brought Eddie Caruso's body out of the Chicago River, Marcus Hale was sitting in a booth at the back of a restaurant on South Michigan Avenue, eating alone, reading nothing, and thinking about his daughter. He did this sometimes, not on purpose. The thought of Sophie arrived the way cold arrives in November, not as a single moment, but as a presence, settling into everything without asking permission. He set down his fork. He looked at the window. Outside, rain was beginning. He left $200 on the table for a $40 meal and walked out into the night without his umbrella, the way a man walks because he has stopped caring about small discomforts, because the large ones have already taken everything worth protecting. Marcus Hale was 61 years old, and he had run the south side of Chicago for 30 years in ways that judges could never quite prove and journalists could never quite print. He had built an empire out of silence and leverage and the particular kind of patience that frightens people more than anger does. He had made men disappear from positions of power. He had ended careers with a single phone call. He had sat across tables from men who believed themselves untouchable and watched their certainty drain away like water from a cracked glass. And he had done all of it, every last piece of it, without losing a night's sleep. Until Sophie. Until the Tuesday in November 7 years ago, when his 18-year-old daughter stepped off a curb in a rainstorm and never came home. After that, Marcus Hale had lost the ability to sleep through a single night without waking in the dark to the sound of a piano being played badly and a girl laughing at her own mistakes. He walked through the rain toward the Meridian Hotel, where he had a meeting scheduled on the 14th floor with 3 men who owed him answers. His overcoat darkened with rain. He did not hurry. He pushed through the revolving door into the warmth of the lobby, and the entire room shifted. The concierge straightened. The businessman near the fountain slowed his stride. The 2 women by the window leaned unconsciously together. And Marcus moved through it all the way he always moved, like weather, like something the room had to accommodate rather than something that had to ask permission. He was 3 steps into the lobby when she came through the revolving door behind him. He heard the cane first, the soft rhythmic sweep of it across marble, and then she was there, a young woman in a rain-soaked coat with a canvas bag on her shoulder and a white cane reading the floor ahead of her in careful, confident arcs. She moved with the particular steadiness of someone who had made peace with navigating a world that was not built for her. She was perhaps 25. Her hair was pulled back simply. Her face was calm. She took 2 steps into the lobby, and then her cane caught the low decorative ridge at the edge of the entryway, the marble step that every sighted guest crossed without thinking, and her weight shifted wrong, and the canvas bag swung, and she walked directly and completely into the chest of Marcus Hale.
The lobby went silent the way a room goes silent when something dangerous might be about to happen. Her hand grabbed his lapel, her cane rang against the marble floor. She said quickly, breathlessly, I'm so sorry, I didn't." And Marcus Hale caught her by both shoulders before she could fall and held her there and looked down at her face and stopped breathing. Because she was the same height Sophie had been. Because her hair was pulled back the same way Sophie used to pull hers back when she practiced piano. Because she was standing in his hands in a rain-soaked coat with a white cane on the floor between them, and Sophie had been losing her sight too. Sophie had been learning the cane too. Sophie had been walking in a rainstorm the night she died, and she had not come home. And this girl, this young woman who was not his daughter, who was a stranger, who was simply a person caught in the rain on a Thursday night in Chicago, looked up at him with her unseeing eyes, and Marcus Hale felt 30 years of stone cracked directly down the middle. His throat closed, his eyes burned. And before he could stop it, before he could pull the composure back over himself the way he had pulled it over everything for 30 years, he leaned forward and whispered one word into the silence of that lobby. Sophie. Every person in that room heard it. Nobody understood it, but every person felt it, the weight of it, the wreckage underneath it. Because whatever Marcus Hale was, whatever this city believed him to be, the sound that came out of him when he said that name was not the sound of a powerful man. It was the sound of a father. The girl went very still. Her name was Claire Daniels, and she was not Sophie, and she knew she was not Sophie. But she had been blind for 6 years, and in those 6 years, she had learned to hear what people did not say, to feel the shape of what was underneath words. And what was underneath that single whispered name was grief, so deep and so long held that she could feel it like a change in air pressure against her skin. She did not pull away, she did not apologize again. She stood quietly in his hands for a moment and then said, very gently, "Sir, I'm not hurt." Marcus released her. He stepped back. The mask came down, smooth, immediate, practiced, and his voice when he spoke was controlled and level. "Are you all right?" It was not a question. Claire tilted her head slightly, the way she did when she was listening past the surface of something. "I'm all right," she said. "Are you?" The lobby did not breathe. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes, not the crack from before, something smaller, something that might in another man have been the beginning of tears, but in Marcus Hale was only the ghost of them. "My car will take you where you need to go," he said. "The rain isn't stopping." Claire's every practical instinct told her to refuse. She was a music teacher from the North Side. She volunteered 3 evenings at a community arts center. She took the bus home. She did not get into cars with strangers in hotel lobbies. "Thank you," she said. "That's kind."
She did not know why she said yes. Later she would think that it was the way he said Sophie, the sound of a man who had been carrying something alone for so long that he had forgotten there was any other way to carry it. He did not go to his meeting on the 14th floor. He sent a message to the 3 men waiting for him, 2 words, "Not tonight." And he got into the back of the black sedan with Claire Daniels, and the car pulled into the rain-slicked streets of Chicago, and neither of them spoke for a full minute. It was Claire who broke the silence, the way she broke most silences, directly, without cruelty, without apology. "Who is Sophie?" Marcus kept his eyes on the window. The rain moved in long silver lines down the glass. He said nothing for so long that the silence itself became an answer of a kind, and then he said, "My daughter." Claire folded her hands in her lap. She waited. "She died 7 years ago," Marcus said. "She was 18. Claire said, "I'm sorry." 2 words, simply spoken, and Marcus believed them in a way he had not believed the same words from anyone in 7 years. Not from the men who worked for him, not from the lawyers and associates who had offered their condolences in careful voices, not from the grief counselor his doctor had sent him to once and never again. He believed them from this young woman he did not know, because she said them without fear and without agenda and without any awareness of who he was. And in 30 years, nobody had spoken to Marcus Hale without knowing exactly who he was. He told her about Sophie. He had never told anyone about Sophie, not the whole of it, not the real shape of it. He told Claire about the degenerative eye condition that had begun taking Sophie's sight at 16. He told her about the specialists in 3 countries and the research funding and the treatments that slowed it but could not stop it. He told her about Sophie learning Braille with her tongue between her teeth and her brow furrowed in concentration, the same face she made at the piano. He told her about driving Sophie to Northwestern in August, helping carry boxes up 4 flights of stairs, standing in the parking lot afterward in the late summer heat and watching her walk back toward the dormitory with her white cane moving ahead of her, and feeling for the first time in his life proud of something he had not built or bought or forced into existence, something that had simply grown on its own into someone extraordinary. He told her about the phone call in November, the Tuesday evening, the rainstorm, the words the hospital used. He had not said these things out loud in 7 years, and they came out of him slowly, in a low voice, without drama, the way water comes through old stone, not all at once, not with force, but steadily, finding every crack. Claire listened without interrupting. She did not offer comfort in the places where comfort would have been hollow. She simply listened completely, the way she had learned to listen to everything, with her whole body, her whole attention, finding what was real inside what was imperfect. When he finished, the car was pulling onto her street. The rain had eased to a fine mist. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said,
"She was learning the cane." "Yes," Marcus said. "She was getting good at it." "She was going to be all right," Claire said. It was not a question. Marcus's jaw tightened. "She was going to be more than all right," he said, and his voice broke on the last word. Quietly, just slightly, like a thread pulled 1 degree too tight. She was going to be remarkable. Claire nodded slowly. "I know," she said. "I can tell. From the way you talk about her, the piano, the cane, the face she made when she concentrated. You don't invent those details. Those are the details of someone you actually watched become themselves." Marcus looked at her. In the dim light of the car, his eyes were wet in a way that would have shocked every person in the city of Chicago who believed they knew him. He said nothing. Claire reached into her canvas bag and found a card by touch and held it out. "I teach music, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, Community Arts Center, North Side. We have a piano. It's old and it's out of tune." She paused. Sophie never got very good at piano, did she? It was not a question either. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. "She was terrible," he said quietly. "She practiced every day for 2 years and she never got past being terrible." "Most of my students don't get good," Claire said. "That's not what it's for." She pushed the car door open, and the mist came in cool and soft, and she stepped out and found the sidewalk and paused. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Hale." She walked to her building door and was gone before he could answer. Marcus sat in the idling car for a long time. His driver knew better than to speak. Outside, Chicago moved around them, taxis, pedestrians, the distant pulse of the city at night. And Marcus Hale sat with the small, plain card in his hand and felt something shift inside him. Not peace, not happiness, nothing so large or so simple as either of those. Something smaller and more honest than both. Something that felt like a door he had sealed shut 7 years ago, standing slightly open for the first time, not wide, not with light flooding through, but open, 1 inch. Enough to feel the air from the other side. He thought about Sophie's hands on the piano keys. He thought about the way she used to laugh at her own wrong notes, not embarrassed, just genuinely amused by herself, by the gap between how she heard the music in her head and what actually came out of her fingers. He thought about a young woman who walked through Chicago rainstorms 3 evenings a week to sit beside people learning hard things and listen to them without judgment. He put the card in his coat pocket. He said, "Take me home, Gerald." And for the first time in 7 years, Marcus Hale wept. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly in the back of a black sedan on a rain-misted street on the north side of Chicago, with his hand pressed flat against his coat pocket, where the card was. For Sophie, for the piano she never got good at, for the cane moving ahead of her across a dormitory parking lot in late summer, for everything she would have become. He wept for all of it. And when it was done, he sat quietly and breathed and felt, underneath the grief, something he had almost forgotten the texture of: gratitude.
For a stranger with a white cane who had walked into him out of the rain and said, "Are you fine?" without flinching. And on the following Tuesday evening, Marcus Hale walked into the Community Arts Center on the north side of Chicago, wearing no overcoat, carrying nothing, having told no one where he was going. The teenager at the front desk looked up and said brightly, "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the piano," he said. She pointed him down the hall. He found Claire at the back of the room, beside an elderly man working through a simple melody with enormous concentration. She heard his footsteps and turned her head. She did not look surprised. "I wondered if you'd come," she said. "Sit down, Mr. Hale." He sat. The piano was old and slightly out of tune, and the room smelled of paint and coffee. Marcus placed his large hands on the keys, hands that had built things and broken things and held power over this city for 30 years, and he began, very slowly, to play. He was terrible. Claire sat beside him and did not correct him. She simply listened. After a long while, she said softly, "She'd be glad you came." Marcus kept his eyes on the keys. He nodded once. In the back of a community arts center in Chicago on a Tuesday evening, something in Marcus Hale that had been sealed shut for 7 years came open. Not all the way, not with ceremony, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to begin. And in this life, enough is sometimes everything. If this story reached something inside you, please subscribe to the Kind Soul Stories and ring the bell so you never miss a story like this one. Every week we bring you stories of quiet courage, unexpected grace, and the love that outlasts everything. You are not alone, and neither are the people in these stories. Thank you for being here. This story carries genuine value for older American audiences on several levels. It portrays grief honestly, not as something that ends or resolves neatly, but as something a person learns to live alongside. It shows that vulnerability does not belong only to the gentle or the innocent, that even those who have built their lives on strength and control carry wounds that need tending. It presents blindness with dignity, showing Claire as perceptive, capable, and professionally fulfilled, rather than defined by limitation. It affirms the quiet importance of community arts programs and volunteer teaching, and at its deepest level, it speaks to the universal experience of loving someone more than your own life and learning, slowly and imperfectly, how to continue living after they are gone.